Let's get it. Howling with the Wolf is live. I am Cameron Wolfe, the Wolf. Thank you guys for joining for another episode. Last week we were in a different location, back in my home of Miami, to talk some NFL, to talk some Dolphins football. Very, very interesting week in Dolphins headquarters, and I want to go ahead and jump straight into it. For those who aren't familiar, we're going to talk about a variety of topics across the NFL, and particularly with the Dolphins throughout this segment. I'll take your questions. I already have a few questions that I want to jump off on, but we're going to go ahead and get into the meat of the episode. And if you're a Dolphins fan, if you've been following what's going on, we have another week of Brocktober that's actually going into November. Ryan Tannehill's shoulder injury has now reached 4 games that he's going to be out, and there are a lot of question marks around Ryan Tannehill's long-term future in Miami, and that is going to be the big topic of the day. Actually wrote a column on ESPN.com this morning about Ryan Tannehill's long-term future. The headline is, "How much longer can the Dolphins wait on Ryan Tannehill?" And, I have a lot of insight and thoughts about the quarterback situation for the Dolphins long-term, not for 2018, but for 2019 and beyond, and how much they want to depend and count on a quarterback who they've been waiting on for 7 years. So go ahead and check that out. I'll talk a little bit about that this episode. And I also want to talk about what came out of Dolphins headquarters today. Adam Gase was very emotional when he vehemently defended Ryan Tannehill, his starting quarterback, and why he believes that he still is nowhere near his ceiling. So some eye-opening comments there. I want to talk about Matt Burke and the defense. But let's go ahead and kick it off on Tannehill. I had a lot of thoughts on Tannehill after the last game or the last few weeks and sort of waiting on him. I had a few thoughts coming into this beat. For those of you who don't know, this is my first year out in Miami. But obviously covering the NFL, I know a little bit of Ryan Tannehill, know this is 7th year, know that this was sort of a make or break year for him, quote unquote. So I was expecting to see the best out of him. When he played, he had highs, he had lows. He was 3-2 at a starter, completing 66% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, kind of up and down. And then he gets injured. Eye-opening stat, he's missed 24 as of Sunday, 24 of his last 29 games. I asked Gase about the old saying that availability is your best ability, and he agreed with that. And I think that matters in no other position than the quarterback position more. So I think that it's frustrating for the Dolphins and Dolphin fans that they have a quarterback that hasn't been available, and then when he has been ready to play and available, he hasn't been, more than mediocre, which is what their team has been recently as well. So I think that this is going to be a very interesting offseason. And I know Adam Gase cringes when we talk about offseason sort of midway through the season, that they're 4-4 and feel like they're still in the thick of things. But I think that it's very appropriate and very needed to discuss Ryan Tannehill and what is going on with their quarterback situation. It's been 7 years. They haven't drafted a quarterback before the 7th round in the Ryan Tannehill era. My proposition is that changes very quickly into this season, and I think that is should be at this point priority number one, figuring out who is your quarterback for 2019 and making sure that if you decide that, hey, it's Ryan Tannehill, get him some competition, because he's going on for too long for no competition. You need a background. That's not the reason why the Dolphins are 4-4 this year, but it all starts with the quarterback. We've seen how Patrick Mahomes turned around a Kansas City Chiefs team that was sort of borderline contender on the playoffs every year, and now they're a championship contender, one of the best teams in the league. They have one of the worst defenses in the league. They still have a lot of holes on that team, but the quarterback changes quite a bit, and you need a quarterback that you can win because and not just with. And I think that's something the Dolphins have right now, and Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback they can win with sometimes, but they don't often or rarely win because of him. They rarely lose because of him, but they rarely win because of him. So I'm going to go to a few questions that I already got coming in about this topic and a couple other topics. As always, I have a panel on my side where I can see you guys' questions. feel free to join in. I love to interact and hear what you guys say. I don't want to feel like I'm talking to myself. We want to have some fun here on Howling with the Wolf. So I just want to give you guys my insight on questions, on thoughts on this team, and thoughts on the NFL. So one question from Mario Graw. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. He said, do you believe that Tannehill will be the starting quarterback next year? If I had to hedge my bets on this, I would probably say there is a 60% chance that Ryan Tannehill is starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins to kick off the 2019 season. Not a 60% chance that I would want him, but a 60% chance that he is. That's because I believe that Adam Gase returns next season, and hearing what we heard from him in the press conference today makes me believe that he is going to be hard-pressed to just let Tannehill whimper away in the water. Tannehill has a big cap number, $26 million for next season, but $13.4 million of it will be dead money if he's released. And they're in a situation where there's not an immediate option, whether in the draft or free agency, to replace him. I've heard Teddy Bridgewater thrown out here, and I love Teddy, but he hasn't been a legitimate starter or a legitimate candidate to be a starter in 3 seasons. So we're not sure exactly where he is physically. We're not sure exactly what exactly he has, and whether the Saints will even make him available. He's Saints property, or he's a Saint right now, and there may be some thoughts there on making him the long-term quarterback in New Orleans. That's a very pipe dream sort of thing. They've had a couple chances at Teddy Bridgewater before, and they haven't taken him. So although he may be an option, I wouldn't be gung-ho and say that, hey, get rid of Tannehill, signing Teddy is the best option going forward. For me, drafting quarterback in round 1, regardless of Tannehill being here or not, would be how I went about things. And then I would probably keep Tannehill as a bridge quarterback until that rookie quarterback was ready. But I'm not the GM. I'm not Tannenbaum. I'm not Greer. So we'll see what they do. Gase made some really interesting comments. If you didn't see earlier in the press conference, he got in a little dispute with Miami Herald reporter Armando Salguero, about sort of the legitimacy of Tannehill and how he's been performing this year. He sort of questioned how much Armando was watching film-wise and said that they see results, they see progress. And he said a very interesting comment that Tannehill hasn't reached the ceiling and that he still sees physical attributes, rare physical attributes that other quarterbacks don't have. That sounds to me not just like a coach that's publicly backing his quarterback because that's what they're supposed to do. That sounds like me, a coach that is putting his name behind Ryan Tannehill. And I'm not sure that's the smartest bet for Adam Gase, but it's his decision. It's just not a quarterback that he drafted, but everything that I've heard from him publicly, everything that's been said privately to me from people in the organization, says that Gase loves Tannehill, and it seems to me that he's going to be, until something changes dramatically, he's going to be on Tannehill's side with this thing. So I see you, Corey. How you doing? Armando and Gase fight this weekend. Armando and Gase kind of have this thing that they, there's sometimes this contentious thing that goes on, and for a lot of people outside, they may be shocked. But Gase can be a little testy sometimes in the presser. He tells us that he can be hot and cold. So I think that's a headline buzzy thing, but I wouldn't overreact too much about that little dispute. I just think that's a coach that's passionate about how he feels, and it's something that a lot of us, and maybe we're seeing something different, but a lot of us in the media don't necessarily see that. So let's see. Chris Beta asked a question about Tannehill. I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to go to your question, Dustin. He says, have you seen Tannehill throw a ball since his injury? He was injured October 7th. At Cincinnati in the fourth quarter. It was a very odd injury because he practiced on Wednesday and Thursday fully, and we saw him practice over those days. So, we didn't think anything of it. We thought that he was going to be good to go, and then all of a sudden he is out. So, that whole thing was a surprise for me, a surprise for a lot of us in the media. But I think that his shoulder injury has worsened. That's something that the team has said repeatedly, and I haven't seen him throw a pass with his right hand since October 11th, which was that Thursday. So it's been 3 weeks. I saw him today in practice. He was throwing with his left hand, and he throws about as good with his left hand as you and I do, probably with our offhand. So that's not something that's a viable possibility. He's a right-handed quarterback, and I think that Adam Gase has said to us that he is throwing inside with trainers, so we haven't seen it. All we have to go off of is Adam Gase's word. I don't know why he would lie to us about that, but we haven't personally seen him throw. Dustin's asking, do you see what Gase sees in Tannehill? I think that Gase, and I wrote this in my column, is right about Tannehill's skill set. I think he may be a little bit over-exaggerating, maybe his rare physical qualities, but he does have a really strong arm. He is the ideal size and weight and athletic ability that you want in a quarterback in the NFL. And I think that he deserves to be a starter in this league. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of talk about Tannehill and what he can do and what he can't do. He's a starter in this league. I think that he's probably somewhere middle to slightly below middle of starting quarterbacks in the NFL, somewhere in that 18 to maybe 22 range. I'd probably put him in. I'd probably link him up somewhere, around the Alex Smith, Joe Flacco range at this point. That's sort of where I see him. And both of those guys are starters for their team. I'd probably put him more Joe Flacco. I'd probably put Alex Smith ahead of him. But the thing with him is durability. And when he's been on the field, we've seen spurts, but we haven't seen exactly, what he's going to be. And the whole potential talk. There's nothing that I guess frustrates me than talking about a guy's potential so deep into their career. Something that frustrated me with Devontae Parker. We're still in year 4 talking about his potential. Year 7, we're talking about Ryan Tannehill's ceiling. At some point, a guy is what they are. And that's just my take. My personal opinion. You can disagree. You can have a different take. Maybe it's a hot take. Maybe it's not. But I think that more times than not, when a quarterback is 30 years old, there are some exceptions. Alex Smith is one of them. But when a quarterback is 30 years old, he typically is what he is. And I think that Ryan Tannehill is a perfectly decent, slightly above average quarterback, and that's who he's been for his career, and that's who he's going to be. And I don't know that you can do more than what you've done over these last 7 years with him at quarterback. There's more problems than that in this Dolphins offense and this Dolphins team overall, but I think he's a guy that you have to have a lot of things set up for. You have to have everything working well. You have to have a really strong defense. You have to have a good running game and working well. Your offensive line has got to be healthy and producing. All those things have to go right, and then you get a Pro Bowl level Ryan Tannehill play. But if all those things have to go right for my quarterback, then maybe, just maybe, I should look into, whether there's another option for, me at a quarterback. That's just me as a decision maker. I see your answer, Corey. Most of us don't understand football. I think I understand some football, but I wouldn't, even pretend to think that I know as much as Adam Gase, as much as we ask him and challenge him. I think that he's a very smart guy who probably knows more than all of us combined on football. But I do think that I know the game enough that I can, challenge a situation when I think that, a quarterback maybe isn't playing to the level that, you may hype him up to. So better quarterback situation than they have in the Giants. Not as good a quarterback situation as they have for Kansas City or some of these other teams. So I think that it's going to be a very interesting offseason evaluation. I think Ryan Tannehill is a really good guy, and I hope that he comes back and just, whether it's after the bye or, into December, whenever, comes back and is able to show exactly what he has, because I think this was a defining year for him, and I would hate for that to be sort of washed away and we're still uncertain. I want certainty too. I just want us to be certain who he is, and I don't think we're certain about it, but I also think that 7 years is a long time to wait to get an answer. I think at some point you either know or you don't. Courtney has a question about your running backs, and I had one other question that I'm going to get to. If you guys have anything else on Ryan Tannehill before I move on, let me know. And then I'll go ahead and address a couple other topics that I want to talk about. I'm going to quickly hit Courtney's, quickly hit another question, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch a little bit gears to NFL overall. Courtney is asking, how do you feel about our running backs? I actually had a pretty in-depth conversation with Frank Gore in the locker room yesterday. And Frank Gore is one of the most, the best way to describe Frank Gore is he's a football player to his heart. He'll talk to you about stuff that he's frustrated with. He'll talk to you about just, hey, I should have got 7 on that play instead of 5. He would love to be the featured back in Miami, but he's been supportive. He knows what's going on with King and Drake, and his talent level. So I think that he's handled this. Both of those guys have handled it, I guess as well as they can. I think that, that should be the feature point of this offense. And I know Adam Gase, probably would rather run over his foot than run the ball 4 or 5 times in a row. But I think that, you got a backup quarterback. You don't have the playmakers that you used to have at receiver. So your running back should be the focal point of your offense. Gore and King and Drake should probably combine for 30 to 35 touches every game. And I think that both of them are very good at what they do. Drake's a really good receiver, probably one of the best receiving backs in the NFL, and he has electric big play ability as a runner and as a receiver. Frank Gore is really good at keeping the offense on track. He's still really strong inside the tackles. His vision is probably one of the best of backs, throughout his career, and it still is really good. I'm just really impressed when I watch the film about the holes and creases he sees and makes 5 yards out of when they maybe block 2 yards. So I think sometimes we understate what Frank Gore has done, but I'm just extremely impressed. I talked to him this week about Adrian Peterson. And he's happy that AP is doing it well for the old guys, so to speak. And he, as he always says, he's doing it for the doubters. At 35 years old, he doesn't look like he's done, like many people thought. So I think that they've got 2 solid backs in King and Drake and Frank Gore. I like to see them get the ball more to King and Drake. But otherwise, I think that that's not an area where there's issues with that game. And I've actually talked a couple times to Kalen Ballage. This may not be his year in 2018, but I think by 2019, he's going to end up having a big impact on this offense. And I think that he's going to be an impact player for Miami. Let's see. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate that. I had one other question, then I'm going to go ahead and jump to NFL, and then I'm going to jump back to Brocktober, and then we'll go ahead and give a prediction, X factors, and get out of here. As always, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Follow me on here. Share with all your fans, all your friends, fellow Dolphins fans. We're trying to create this Howling with the Wolf audience to be a big thing. So thanks for all your support, and hopefully I answer you guys' questions and have some fun on the way. So last question I got before here on the Dolphins is, any chance we change our defensive philosophy or at least move Minka outside and Bobby back inside? I may write about this next week. I actually talked to Minka a few times this week, sometimes about Alabama, because him and Devon Gottschall had a lot of trash talk about Alabama. Minka Fitzpatrick picked a 42-10 victory for the Tide over LSU on Saturday, and Gottschall was pissed off about it. He was not happy about the blowout, disrespect. But anyway, back to your question. We actually asked Matt Burke about Minka playing outside, and he said he has considered it. He feels like that he could handle his own at boundary corner, but they don't want to put too much on his plate at this point. They feel like that he's pretty solid with his 2 roles of safety and slot corner, and they feel like when they put him in a 3rd role, it starts to diminish his effectiveness on the field. So I think that you're going to see him pretty much play slot corner and safety down the way. Maybe next year, maybe in the offseason, they try a little bit more if there's an emergency situation where they need an outside corner. But I think right now you're going to see him play those 2 positions. I think eventually he's going to have to be a full-time starter. One of the things that's been frustrating for fans and some of us as well is that you see Minka probably one of the two, second or third most impactful player on the defense, but he's only playing 60% of the snaps. So I think that's something where Minka, you got to get your first round pick on the field. It's that simple. Minka is a baller. You drafted him 11 overall. You got to steal with that pick. You passed on a quarterback to draft a safety, and now you're playing him at slot corner at 60% of the snaps. I know there's a need there, but I think the Dolphins need to have better use of Minka Fitzpatrick. So that's sort of my thoughts on that. And I think Bobby McCain is a slot corner who's playing outside, and that's a little bit of why we're seeing him get beat. So the Dolphins' big mistake was not adding a second slot outside cornerback. Xavier Howard is on his way to being a stud, but there's no cornerback two, a true boundary corner who stepped up. They hoped that it was going to be Cordrea Tankersley or Torrey McTyer or Tony Lippett. None of them stepped up. All of them have been disappointing, and they don't trust any of them on the field. So that's why you see Bobby McCain, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Xavier Howard playing nearly all the cornerback snaps week after week because they don't trust anybody else. And, they trust Minka and TJ McDonald on the field, Minka at slot corner, TJ at safety, more than they do Minka at safety and whoever else at corner. So that's sort of where they're at. It's sort of a subject of need. And hopefully in the offseason they added that position so they can put Minka in the best position to succeed. So NFL, I had a question come in from Luis Velasquez who asked before the show, and he's asking the question now. So I'll hit a bang with both of them. I'm trying to go quickly on these. As always, guys, if you have any thoughts or comments, just fire them away, and I'll go ahead and get to them. But first, he wanted me to give an NFL award. It is midseason. I know we're talking a lot about the offseason here in Miami, but it is midseason. And for those who aren't Dolphins fans or those who are looking across the NFL, I got some awards for you. I got who I am thinking as far as MVP so far this year. And I think that there are two main candidates I have for this award. I think number one is Todd Gurley out there in L.A. He has been a stud. Sean McVay really has schemed up a great scheme to get him involved in the passing game and the running game. And he, in a quarterback award, he has, been next level. So I've been really impressed with Todd Gurley. I think that he may be 1A in this award right now, and 1B is Patrick Mahomes. If you've been following the show since the beginning, I've been raving about Patrick Mahomes, as I like to call him, Patrick Mahomes. And I think that he is the co-MVP at the midway point. I think what we've seen from Kansas City and him has been extremely impressive, especially for a quarterback in his first year. So I think that you're gonna continue to see him evolve, and I think that we haven't heard the last of Kansas City, particularly when it comes to the AFC. So I think two championship contenders have the top two MVP candidates. Comeback of the year is going to be a really tight contest. I think Andrew Luck and Adrian Peterson are my two favorites for this award. I think right now Andrew Luck probably is going to be the guy who's going to get the bid for me because of what he's doing on that line. I actually talked to Frank Gore, who just raved about Andrew Luck, and he didn't play with him a ton in Indianapolis, but he said that his toughness, his ability is unlike any quarterback he's ever played with, and he thinks that Luck, along with that resurgent offensive line, have a chance to still win that AFC South. So he's my comeback player of the year. I guess if Mahomes ends up winning MVP, then Todd Gurley would be my offensive player of the year, and vice versa. So those would be my guys there. Rookie of the year, I know Saquon Barkley is the favorite for a lot of folks, but I'm going to go a little bit out of the box here and say Philip Lindsay out in Denver. The undrafted kid from Colorado, went to the University of Colorado, and he is one of the NFL's leading rushers. Really small dude, but I've been really impressed with what he's doing. Saquon Barkley probably ends up winning that award, but I wanted to give a shout out to Philip Lindsay, and I think that he's going to be the guy that I put at least at my midseason ballot for Rookie of the Year. So that's my guy there. And then Defensive Player of the Year, I think there's multiple candidates there, but I think J.J. Watt's resurgent in Houston deserves a lot of attention. He was a guy that we questioned whether he was going to be done after all those back surgeries, after all the injuries, and he has been really impressive. I think he might be closing in on double-digit sacks if he doesn't have it already. So I've been really impressed with him. Coach of the year, it's got to be Sean McVay. He didn't win it last year because Dougie Peterson, was having such a great season. And, I think that he's the guy who has really took over the NFL with his transcendent play calling. Even Adam Gase raved about him and said that, hey, I watch them sometimes, and I'm just like, they're doing something special. So Sean McVay is my coach of the year. And quickly to Luis Velasquez, last question. Who do you think improved the most after the trade deadline? I really like what two NFC East teams did. The Philadelphia Eagles added Golden Tate. It's golden. Probably if not the best, one of the best yak receivers in the league. Yards after the catch, a yak monster, a yak king, a yakinator, whatever you want to call him. He's still one of the best at what he does. And they got him for a third-round pick. I think the champs got better. And I think that NFC East race is going to be really interesting down the stretch. And I think the champs aren't done fighting in what is a very competitive NFC with the Vikings, with the Saints, with the Rams, with the Packers, even with the Panthers. So I think that Washington made the other best move of the trade deadline, getting Clinton Dix. He has been one of the best safeties in the NFL so far this season. And I think that defense is really underrated, Washington. And now they've got another starting caliber safety to add to DJ Swearinger, who's also been playing well. So two teams in the NFC East who I think are very good, and I don't think we've heard the last of them as far as the NFC East and the NFC race overall. So those are my thoughts there. Long ramble on my NFL thoughts. But I think that I'm really excited to see the second half of the year. Not excited to see Thursday Night Football. We're seeing Nick Mullins. I'm going to be honest, I didn't know who Nick Mullins was before Adam Schefter reported that he's going to be started today. This will be the one game where you probably won't even look over if you don't have to. So this upcoming slate, I think we're going to have the Rams Chiefs coming up soon. We're going to have the Saints, I believe, Saints Rams matchup. There's going to be a lot of good football coming up, and I'm excited about this second half of the season. Even if the Dolphins don't end up making the playoffs, I think that there's going to be a very, very interesting, lot of new teams in this playoff mix going forward. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about Brocktober going in November. There was a quote that came out this week that got a lot of buzz about Brock. He basically said that, paraphrasing this quote, is that I want to play so well that I never go back to the bench again. I want to play so well that they keep me in this role even when Ryan Tannehill returns. And it caught a lot of buzz because a lot of people don't hear the backup quarterback speaking that way about a job. But Brock is a very confident guy. He's done this before. He is a starter by nature, the way he speaks. He's really good at the media. If you really watch him, he's a really well-spoken guy. He understands the dynamic of it. It's dating back to Denver. He learned a lot of this from Peyton Manning. So I think for Brock, he knows how to sell himself. And I think in the back of his mind, he's thinking, if I do all right, I can get somebody else to think that I'm a starter. And I can get that check one more time. He already got the Texans for a big check. And the way quarterback play is in the NFL, Brock is thinking, I play well enough, I say the right thing. It might not be in Miami, but I might be able to get another chance to compete for a job. And I think that's why you're hearing some of the play from Brock. Brock has actually played decent. He's 1-2, but he's played decent. Kind of fell down a bit back in Houston last week. But I think your game plan for Brock, as long as he plays, for the Jets this week, if for Green Bay, if he plays there next week, is going to be getting the ball out quickly to playmakers and handing the ball off to Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake. He's played well in spurts, but he is a backup quarterback. You don't want to put too much on his plate. The Brock puns are fun. We got to think of some November puns. But I think that you may buckle up and you might see Brock all the way into the bye. So those are my thoughts on Brocktober. My prediction this week is 23-20 Miami. Even through all the talk about Tannehill, even through all the 2-game losing streak, all the talk we're having, I think the Dolphins get a very, very sweet game for them this week against the Jets here at home. They beat up on the Jets. They had 3 turnovers the first time they played, 3 sacks. I think the defense, really rallies after being challenged. Matt Burke essentially said today that they've got to learn some shit. Players on the defense. They essentially, he feels like players have been doing their own thing, not necessarily freelancing, but trying to make their own plays, not playing within the scheme. He got so frustrated about coverage bust. He threw a tablet and busted a Microsoft tablet on the sidelines yesterday. There's been calls to fire Matt Burke. Adam Gase believes it's the players more than the scheme. I think it's a combination of both, but I think that the defense really responds this week, and I think we see a couple turnovers off Sam Darnold, and I think the Dolphins find a way to squeak out a win. So that's my prediction. Jason, he's going to get on me if I don't answer his question. Jason Leisure, which Miami Dolphin would win a fight against a real wolf? Wolves are obviously the best animal in all of the pack. There is no one that can defeat a real wolf because real wolves are the sort of the kings of the animal kingdom. That's why you don't see a lot of people messing with wolves. You don't see a lot of people domesticating wolves because they're dangerous creatures. They can attack you at any time. They're very smart. They run the wild. So we here at Howling with the Wolf don't believe that any wolves can be defeated by any Miami Dolphins, no matter what. So I hope that answers your question, Jason. No Miami Dolphins can defeat a real wolf. So yeah, X factors for this week, as always. 3 X factors, guys who are not necessarily going to be the top names given in the week that are going to have an impact on this game. Number 1, I'm going to put the spotlight on 2 guys who are going to share my first X factor: Ziggy Hood and Sly Williams, 2 defensive linemen they brought in this week to help stop the run. They're going to play quite a bit this week. And I talked to Sly, a new Sly back from my Tennessee days and Denver days. So this is my 3rd stop with Sly. He's a guy who's a little bit undersized as a nose tackle, but I think he's going to play, he's going to play a good role as a 4-3 defensive end. He's just a run stuffer. He's not going to give you much as a pass rusher. But him getting in there is Ziggy Hood, another veteran. You hope those guys can help you stop the Jets' running attack, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to run the ball down the Dolphins' throat. So those are my first X factors. You're going to see how much they can help to a porous Miami run D that has given up 600 rushing yards over the last 3 games. My second X factor of this game is going to be Nick O'Leary. Nick O'Leary has been a guy that we've had a lot of fun with here in the media. He's a guy who doesn't talk a lot. Donald Loggins calls him the legend of Nick O'Leary when he comes in and speaks about him. So he's a guy who was picked up as a waiver wire claim for the Dolphins earlier this year and is quickly elevated into a tight end 1 role. I think that he's going to be a safety valve for Brock Osweiler this week, and I'm going to predict that this is the biggest game of Nick O'Leary's career so far Sunday against the Jets. So I think that he's a potential X factor for the Dolphins. And as always, a prediction for an X factor on the Jet side of the ball is going to be linebacker Avery Williamson. I think that he is a guy they signed. They gave about $7 or $8 million a year for in free agency, and he is their sort of middle guy who gets everything rolling on sort of the defense. So he's going to be in charge of calling the defense. He's going to be in charge of dictating who's on what assignments, and I think he's going to have some opportunities to cover Nick O'Leary or Kenyon Drake out of the backfield, and those are, or maybe even Danny Amendola across the slot. So you're going to see him active in the passing game. You're going to see him active trying to stop Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake. So I think that he's going to be a big X factor on how this game's played. They blitzed him a good bit as well. So I think look out for Avery Williamson, number 54 on the Jets. I think he's my 3rd X factor. So thanks, guys. Good chat this week. Jason Leisure, good Wolf talk. As always, we always have good Wolf talk here on Howling with the Wolf. If you enjoyed this talk, follow me on Facebook, share with your friends, like your page. Give me any feedback on my page. And we'll be here again next week, same time, same place, and we'll do do some more howling. So thanks, guys, and talk soon.